Thank you, everyone, and I would like to now transit to a keynote speaker. Many of you know Duane, who is in many regards one of the pioneers of this regenerative future. And Duane, when we spoke about your session today, I suggested that maybe one of the topics that you can cover is actually this journey that you have experienced. Because if we think about the messages that we are now addressing here, the messages about non-sustainable modality of human civilization, depletion of resources, approaching critical boundaries, it has been here for a while. It's evidently worsening. There is an aggravation of problems, evidently. Nevertheless, when you started this journey 4 decades ago, as I understand, this has already been there. And you've been promoting it vigorously, and you've been experimenting with many models. So what was this journey for you, and what do you think worked? And if we take this, let's say, to next generation, because one of our ideas is that younger generations need to be increasingly brought into this space, and in future forums, there will be more and more of young people's co-creation and presence. Tomorrow as well, we will have some sessions on it. But if we kind of carry forward this message to next generations, what would it be? What works? What helps? What drives this?
Great. Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, in the interest of time, we have half an hour here, and there are three themes that I would like to bring into the conversation. First of all, I really enjoyed this last hour. Powerful, even though all guys we're doing good work here. So I got a lot from the last hour. So thank you much. I'm honored to be here. There are three things I want to talk about that are somewhat unusual. One is not the fact that we are facing collapse as a species, as a planetary civilization. And there is a growing literature, a growing recognition that we are moving towards the collapse of the whole planetary system. Now, a number of people just stopped there. They said, well, it's going to collapse. That's it. End of the game. And I'm saying, no, that's the beginning. What happens after we break down and collapse? What moves through all of this? So we're on a longer journey that I want to explore three elements of briefly. The first is, what is the life stage of the human family? As we look at what we're confronting, what is our capacity to rise to the challenge? And for the last more than 30 years, as I've gone around the world, I've been asking the question, often before I even begin a talk, I'll say, let me ask you a simple question. What is the life stage of the human family? When you put us all together and you look at our behavior, what is our life stage? And I give people four choices. I say, are we behaving like toddlers, infants? Are we behaving like teenagers, adolescents? Are we behaving like adults, maybe early adulthood, but nonetheless the majority of adults? And lastly, elders. Four possibilities: toddlers, teenagers, adults, or elders. And I'll ask an audience this question before I even begin to talk. And I say, look, I'd like you to turn to someone you've never met, discuss this, and then we're going to take a vote. And around the world, I've asked this question from Brazil, Japan, around the US, Europe, and so on. And one answer keeps coming back again and again and again. And it is that we are in our teenage years as a species. And typically about 25% will say, well, we're behaving like toddlers. About 3/4 will take a stand. I'll ask people to stand up for their point of view. Take a stand that we are in our adolescence as a species. We're behaving like teenagers. And I'll say, that's good news. Because if we're behaving like teenagers, it's only one more step and we're moving into our early adulthood. And that is what's required right now. That theme in various ways keeps surfacing in the conversations we're having. We're not yet behaving up to our higher potentials, capacities for maturation. Now, if we can just make that small step towards maturation and into our early adulthood, one of the first things to happen is that we begin to take responsibility for the well-being of others. The time of initiation in indigenous societies is not really for the individual, it's for the community. The community needs to know there are individuals there that are looking after the well-being of the larger community. That's one of the hallmarks of moving into your early adulthood, as that you take responsibility for the well-being of life beyond yourself. And that's really something we desperately need right now. But we're moving there. So that's one theme. A second theme is what is the nature of paradigm change that's underway right now? And I'll just mention that I had an opportunity a half century ago to be one of the core participants in the earliest research in parapsychology that the government ever funded. And they had 4 subjects that they worked with for a period of 3 years before it was taken over by the CIA and became secret. But that research was exploring the capacities to interact with the universe, and presuming it had a field of consciousness throughout. And so I learned a tremendous amount by getting feedback, all the time, feedback. Are you actually interacting with the universe? And again over a period of years, say 3 hours at a time in the laboratory, 2 or 3 days a week. I would leave the futures group where I was working and go over to the engineering labs. And there it was. There was evidence again and again that we are living in a living universe. Now, I had the opportunity years ago to co-author a book with Joseph Campbell, famous historian, explorer of the mythology of human society. And he was asked at one point in an interview, he said, look, the interviewer said, aren't people just looking for more meaning in life? They want a life filled with meaning. Isn't that what people want? And Campbell replied, no, I don't think that's what people are looking for. People are looking for the direct experience of being alive, the direct experience of being alive. And out of that comes a sense of meaning and purpose and all the rest. But first of all, there has to be an embodied, direct sense. I'm here living in a living universe. And the implications of that are stunning. We've been living in a non-living universe, in a dead universe. Material reality and empty space is essentially all we've got, according to the materialists. So let's exploit that which is dead on behalf of the living, the few that are alive. And so if we look at the universe around us as really dead matter and empty space, the natural next step is to exploit that. Let's exploit the deadness for the few like ourselves that are alive. So if we can begin to shift into our early adulthood, if we can begin to shift our paradigm of seeing the universe not simply as dead matter and empty space, but as a living system in its entirety. And that is a theme that's been coming up here already. So this is a paradigm that goes back to our ancient understanding of indigenous cultures. We live in a living reality, respect it, regard it, take care of it. And that shift of mindset can be incredibly powerful for transforming how we live on the earth, particularly if it's combined with moving into our early adulthood. Now, the third question is, okay, let's say as individuals we do that. We're moving into our early adulthood. We're moving into a new sensibility of what we're doing here. We're not just trying to out-compete one another. We're trying to cooperate and create a valued world way beyond what we have right now. So the question is, how in the world do we come together and as a human family now, 8 billion people or more, come to some degree of mutual understanding. This is what we want. How in the world can we do that? Well, the revolution in capacity has already happened. In 2018, for the first time in human history, a majority of people could talk to one another with the internet. And I like to hold up my cell phone and I say, here's the technology that will transform the world. Because right now, it's not simply a majority of people that can talk to one another. It is 2/3 of the people on this planet now have access to the internet with their cell phones. And by the end of this decade, it will be 3/4 of humanity. Now, if we want to talk to ourselves, we already have it. We're walking around holding the future in our hands with our cell phones, our mobile phones. Now, so we are technologically, we have the capacity to come together, to speak together, and to find in very simple ways our collective consciousness, our collective sentiments for moving into the future. So we right now have those capacities, and we need to begin to mobilize those with an initiative I'm calling Earth Voice. I'm talking with people around the Earth. Would you sign up to be a participant in an Earth Voice initiative? If you could go online and you could say, well, look, what is the life stage? And I'll vote, are we toddlers, teenagers, adults? Yes. Okay. Well, let's recognize we're in our adolescence. We're trying to grow up. Well, how do you feel about climate change? Is this something you really care about? Do you have strong views? Yes, I really want a different approach to climate change that includes the entire Earth and so on. My point is we have the tools, we have the technology, we need the maturity to recognize we have those tools. We need the sensibility that we're learning to live in a living universe. And then we need to come together in common understanding by using those tools to find our pathway into a more promising future. So if we put those elements together, I think we have the tools and the capacity. Not only we're going into collapse for sure, but we're going to go through collapse as a time of great initiation for our species. And that is then the pathway into a more promising future. And it's a realistic passage into the future. So that's my sense of it all. And let me pause there for comments and questions.
Thank you, and let me thank you. what a rich introduction. And I would like to ask people to raise their hands if you have questions to Duane, maybe at this point, with these 3 points that were addressed. And maybe I can begin by saying yes to all of this, Duane. I hold a very similar perspective, and that's what gives me hope, actually, is indeed that we have everything in our hands, including we just discussed the role of technologies. Like if we think about the range of technologies that were there present and are present now, and just kind of maybe some of them are staying within small pockets of research and prototypes. But if we want to address literally every problem that we are facing right now, we can amplify this by actually beginning to learn from each other. Now, my question to you is, there are also very present forces that are blocking this from happening. Yesterday, we discussed the role of social media platforms. And the expression was that social media platforms, as they are not made for peace. They are not made for collaboration. They are made for the opposite. They are made to extract our attention. They are made to exploit whatever they can exploit of this different kind. They are very extractive in their way of operating. And yet they dominate. If we think there were platforms 20 years ago, 25 years ago, at the beginning of internet that really were different, that were based on the dreams of people that were founding fathers of internet that really wanted to amplify our collective capacity for collaboration. These platforms are not present there anymore. So my question to you would be, first of all, how do we deal with these forces? Because they are present. How do we name them? How do we deal with them? And since they are hegemonic, it's evidently not possible to just destroy them. They need to be kind of taken, some kind of alchemic transition needs to happen.
Great. Wonderful question. I spent the entire decade of the 1980s as a media activist in the San Francisco Bay Area. And basically, my solution is simple. Take back the airwaves. This is during the television era. Take back the airwaves. Take back the internet. It's ours. We own it. This is a democratic world that is being manipulated. So what we did in the Bay Area was we said, well, we own the airwaves. They're ours. You may have the facility, but we have the airwaves that you use with those technologies. And we said we want to do a prototype electronic town meeting for the whole Bay Area. It's huge, millions of people involved. And what we did, we had a primetime electronic town meeting. We used television for getting feedback, getting information from experts, and then we used telephones to give feedback and to vote on the views that were coming to us. And so we had this hour-long prototype, and it was seen by over 300,000 people, and we had 6 votes from a scientific sample of citizens. And what we found was that the understanding that was being put out by the experts, in this case it was about Russia and attitudes towards Russia, was way off from where the public at large stood. And in the course of that hour, 6 votes came back from that scientific sample live. And what we saw was the evolution of thinking right there in real time from this kind of manipulative mindset into a more collaborative, cooperative mindset. And so we did that with television and telephones. Now we advance a half a century. I was with a Google executive a year or so ago, and I said, look, we really need to talk as a species. We need to have the combined capacities of the internet and so on to enable that. And I said, what do we do working with Google or whoever to make that possible? And he just sat there and he kind of looked at me and he was puzzled and he said, you don't really understand, do you? That's what he said. You don't really understand. What you want has already been created. We already have that. What's missing is not the technology, but rather the use, the governance of that technology. And so now we can fast forward a half a century and we can say, look, instead of television and telephones, what we have is the internet and mobile phones. And with that, we have a revolution that can embrace the entire Earth. The entire Earth. In a 24-hour period, we could have a vote from the people of the Earth. How do you feel about climate change, species extinction, resource depletion, all the rest, and begin to build some collective sentiment for our collective future? So we're on the verge of a revolution, but it requires us to stand up for it, to step forward with it. We can't just sit back and wait for technology to fix it. We have to step forward with our own capacities and call for a new level of conversation, dialogue, maturation, aliveness in the universe, and so on. We can do that. Here, it's so close. We're so close on the one hand to going over the precipice of this evolutionary cliff and going into profound collapse, and we're so close to being able to come together in the face of those trends and say, well, wait, let's talk about this. Let's see where it is we really want to go from here as a species, and we can begin to do that. So let's use the tools, the empowerment that is already out there pervasively right now with the internet, for example.
Thank you, Duane. I can see that Daniel Christian Wall just published this question, which is in the chat, saying that we need a politics of tenderness more than ever. not tenderness as capitulation to particular conclusions that have already been made, and not tenderness as if you don't see the world as I do, there is something wrong with you, but tenderness as the nurturing of grace that allows something different, something even beautiful to be born in the midst of the fires.
Yes.
This is a quote by Bayo Akomolafe. Actually, we asked Bayo to join, and he wasn't available this time, but he probably will join one of future conversations. So how would you start a new level of conversation like this? What is possible?
Well, first of all, let me put in the chat access to, there we go, our website, choosingearth.org. And if you go on to choosingearth.org, there's a book, there's a film, and so on. And where we start with all of this is understanding. We're building understanding right now. This is a very, very serious situation. We have never experienced anything like this in the last 300,000 years. This is an unprecedented pivot in human evolution and the evolution of life on the Earth. So first of all, we actually own up, recognize, accept what is happening here is extraordinary, unprecedented. Secondly, well, then let's step up. The typical lament of civilizations that have collapsed through history is that, well, we understood what was happening, but it was too little and too late. Too little and too late. That summarizes many civilizations that have collapsed. If we say, look, instead of too little, what is maybe a lot? And instead of too late, let's not wait 10 years. Let's do it right now. So if we would say right now, let's begin to develop an Earth voice capacity. We understand what's happening, and out of understanding comes communication. Out of communication then comes consequence. We can choose our pathway into the future collectively. We can begin not to stop things that are problems, but rather to move through them. We can see this as an evolutionary transformation of maturation. And by seeing this differently and moving through it choicefully, we have the potential to really transform life on this planet. I noticed James talking about co-housing and regenerative eco-villages and so on. My wife and I live in a co-housing community of about 70 people here in Northern California. And we work together, live together, and we support the community as a collective enterprise. So we're learning our way into this right now, how to live together in community at a small scale, how to live together in community at an Earth scale. And we have the technology to bridge that right now. And if we can say, look, we're just, give us a break. Don't be so hard on humanity. We're acting like teenagers. Yes, we are. Let's grow up. Let's encourage that. Instead of trying to stop from the past, let's move forward into a transforming future. Let's move into a future that has deep aliveness and a search for the direct experience of being alive as integral to the pathway that we're looking for. And that doesn't cost a lot. We don't have to consume a lot to feel our direct aliveness with love, with nature, with other people, with animals, and so on. That is not going to cost a fortune, but it will bring a fortune of goodwill and tenderness into our lives. So that's roughly the direction I see is really important for our future.
Thank you. Daniel, would you like to, I see you were raising hand. Would you like to ask or?
Only if it fits in the flow. I don't know.
Well, I think we are approaching the end of this half an hour contribution. And like I said, there's a wealth of wisdom you are bringing, so it's really doesn't do you justice. But maybe just to begin again, with kind of sensing this into this conversation. So Daniel, what would you feel?
Just highlighting something that I recently came back from a beautiful event that Helena Norberg Hodge organized in Bristol, which was called Planet Local Summit. And while it was still a Northern Hemisphere dominated event, it was really trying to bring in people from different parts of the world. And I'm increasingly, when I'm in those spaces and talking to people who live their life in those spaces in the global South, realizing that we have to watch out that we don't disappear up our own asses in our own echo chamber of the kind of white Western narrative. So much of what we're rediscovering, and which is wonderful that we're rediscovering, is actually still held by cultures that draw their ways of being and seeing from other ontologies and other epistemologies. And so if we want to bring ourselves back into this radical aliveness, which I'm completely with Duane, that we need to do that, how do we create spaces like this, humbly also listening to people who actually still live in a living, dynamic universe that they understand to be a relational universe? That we're like, our science is finally getting back to that. Wonderful. We've come full circle. But yeah, I'm just noticing that otherwise we're like in danger of, because what I find painful in that context is that loving, caring people are then eventually in the global South being dismissed just because they come from Europe and they come from America. So how do we do Aikido with that now?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we have understanding, and what you communicate, Daniel, is the understanding where we can say, well, we're returning to ancient wisdom here. We used to understand we're living in a living universe. Let's engage that aliveness, respect it, revere it, take care of life. Now, so the paradigm change of that includes science. This is very important. Science and spirituality are coming together to redefine reality as a living system. Now, that's really the science. We need to ground the science in our everyday lives, and that's where we then come to, let's say, a co-housing community of less than 100 people living together, working together, growing food together, and so on. There's an opportunity then to bring preciousness, a sacred regard into life in that smaller context. But then that smaller context then reaches out and you can say, well, I live in this world of aliveness and regard and respect. Let's create for the world what's really true here at the most local level. So we're trying to bridge right now between the particular and the whole, but we're beginning to do it. It was showing up right here in this panel here today.
Thank you very much, Duane. Such a rich conversation, and again, I feel like we're just tasting a bit of it, and really round of applause, I guess, virtual applause from everyone in the audience.